The sun never touches the damp, foul pits of Isengard, but we don't need it. We're creatures of fire, born of dark magic and the will of Saruman the White. Each day begins the same. The earth trembles with the rhythm of the forges. I rise from my sleeping alcove, a narrow, damp slot carved into the rocky walls of the pits. I don't sleep long. The taskmasters, their eyes blazing with cruelty, see to that. It's the year 3019 of the Third Age, the height of Saruman's industrial war machine. Every hammer strike echoes the White Wizard's ambition to claim dominion over Rohan and beyond. My brethren and I, we're the engines of his conquest. Our skin, black and red, marks us as different, stronger and more focused than the goblins scuttling around the edges of our forges. And my brethren, Shrimp and Ding, more captured. Today is no different. The air stinks of sweat, sulfur, and the sharp tang of iron. My first task? Sharpening blades. Hundreds of them. Each one destined for the hand of an Uruk Hai warrior, or the crude grasp of some wild Dunlending. The weapons must be flawless, for Saruman tolerates no failure. A jagged edge or weakened blade. That earns a lash, maybe worse. I glance at the pits beside me. The goblins work furiously to shovel coal into the forges, their shrieks drowned by the roar of flames. They fear us, as they should. We Uruk Hai are Saruman's true creations, his warriors of perfection. What are you staring at, worm? I snarl at a goblin that pauses too long. It scurries away and I grin, baring jagged teeth. Even here, power is everything. Beyond the pit, the distant sound of whips and snarling wolves fills the air. The warg trainers must already be at it. Those beasts will join the front lines soon. But for now, my focus is on my blades. Each spark from the whetstone is a small victory. Each edge sharpened brings us closer to war. The thought excites me. My blood burns with purpose, unlike the sluggish men content to plow their fields and sing their songs. Saruman offers something greater: conquest, domination, and the sweet, savage taste of fear in an enemy's eyes. As I finish my first batch of blades, a horn sounds, a deep, bone-shaking note that echoes through Isengard. A shipment of supplies has arrived. From above the pit, massive wooden crates are lowered by creaking pulleys. My hands itch to crack them open, to reveal the armor and weapons within. But that's not my duty. Not yet. The overseers bark orders, their voices cutting through the cacophony. Faster! You're slower than a Shire slug! I smirk. The grindstone screeches to a halt as the midday rations arrive. A thick sludge of questionable origin is slopped into iron bowls, accompanied by hard black bread that could double as a projectile in battle. I grab my share and retreat to a quiet spot, if such a place exists in Isengard. As I shovel the muck into my mouth, a loud voice cuts through the din. "This filth again?" snarls Gurs, one of the older Uruks, his hulking frame casting a shadow over the rest of us. He tosses his bowl to the ground, the contents splattering across the dirt. We fight, we bleed, and Saruman feeds us pig slop. Some of the others grunt in agreement. A few even throw down their bowls, though not before gulping what they can. An Uruk wastes nothing, not food, not anger. Gurs, emboldened by the murmurs of dissent, steps forward, raising his fists. "We deserve better. Meat from the storerooms, ale from the barrels, not this poison fit for goblins." At first, I ignore him. Complaining about rations isn't new. Gurs makes this speech at least once a week. But today, something feels different. The workers around him are riled, their fists clenched, their eyes burning with the same dark fire that drives us in battle. a group of captains strides into the pit, their armor glinting in the firelight. "Shut your mouths," growls their leader, a scarred brute named Wraith. His whip dangles at his side, but he hasn't drawn it. Yet. "You think Saruman cares what you eat? You think he built us for feasting? We're made for war. Get back to work." But Gers doesn't back down. He steps closer, towering over Wraith. "War needs strength. Strength needs meat. What good are we if we starve in these pits before we even see the battlefront?" Wraith sneers, his sharp teeth bared. "What good are you if you can't take orders? Maybe we should feed you to the wargs. They're not picky." The tension snaps like an overdrawn bowstring. Gers lunges and his massive fists collide with Wraith's chest, sending the captain staggering. Chaos erupts. Uruks leap from their places, throwing punches, smashing bowls and roaring their battle cries. The goblins scatter like insects, screeching as the pit descends into a brutal free-for-all. I'm swept into the melee before I can think, swinging my fists at anything that moves. The air is thick with the metallic tang of blood and the crack of breaking bones. One Uruk grabs a glowing rod from the forge, using it as a weapon to bludgeon his enemies. Another slams a goblin into a barrel, spilling its contents across the ground. Above us, the overseers watch, their faces twisted with fury and amusement. Eventually, the sound of a horn cuts through the chaos. A sharp, commanding blast. It's Saruman's personal signal, and it freezes us where we stand. The brawl ends as quickly as it began, leaving the pit littered with bruised and battered bodies. "Back to work," Wraith growls, limping to his feet. "And you," he snarls at Gers, "you'll get your meat, right after the wargs are done gnawing on it." The brawl leaves its mark, not just on our bodies, but on the pit itself. Broken tools and spilled coal litter the ground, and the forges stand silent for a moment. An unforgivable delay. Even in our brutal hierarchy, this rebellion is costly. As the overseers descend to restore order, whispers spread. "Gers won't see another sunrise," mutters one Uruk beside me, spitting out a tooth loosened in the fight. "He's lucky if he sees the next hour," I reply, shaking soot from my hands. But as the tension settles, there's no immediate punishment. That's almost worse. When Saruman waits, it means his wrath will come later. And harder. The captains bark orders to clean up the mess, and we set to work with grudging obedience. Still, the fight lingers in my mind. Gers's words, about strength, about deserving more, strike a chord. Not because I care about the food. We're built to endure worse than slop. It's the reminder of what we are, tools in Saruman's hand, forged for a single purpose. The thought gnaws at me, as persistent as a warg's bite. Overhead, the sky churns with dark clouds, a reflection of the mood in the pits. Smoke from the forges rises to join them, creating a choking haze that blocks out even the faintest light. Yet in the heart of this darkness, something glimmers, far above, at the peak of Orthanc, Saruman's tower. The Palantir. The older Uruks speak of it in hushed tones, the seeing stone that grants Saruman his power. They say through it he communes with the Great Eye, Sauron himself, the Dark Lord in Mordor. I've never seen the Palantir, but I feel its presence, heavy and oppressive, like the weight of unseen chains. "Keep moving!" an overseer snarls, slamming the butt of his spear into the ground. The sound jolts me back to the present. By the time the pits are restored, the overseers round up Gers and a handful of others who dared to take his side. Their punishment isn't subtle. They're dragged to the edge of the pits, where the wargs pace restlessly in their pens. We don't need words, to understand their fate. The beasts are hungry, and their handlers have been waiting for fresh meat. The beasts are hungry, and their handlers have been waiting for fresh meat, and they see. I turn away as the wargs howl and the screams begin. Not out of mercy, I have none, but because it's a distraction. My own survival depends on focus, not sentiment. I grip my hammer and return to the forge, the rhythm of my work helping to drown out the noise. But the day stretches on, each moment bleeding into the next like an endless battlefield. Yet beneath the labor and the violence, a single thought remains. We are more than beasts. But in Saruman's shadow, will we ever be anything else? A shout interrupts my musings. The war orders have come. A captain waves a parchment above his head. At last, the reason for all this toil. Tomorrow we march. The air changes before we see him. It grows colder, heavier, as though the shadows of Isengard itself are gathering strength. I feel it in my bones, a deep, unnatural chill. The forges seem quieter, the usual roar subdued to a dull murmur, as every Uruk Hai senses the arrival of something far beyond even Saruman's power. Then comes the sound, the hollow, grating screech of a Nazgul's mount descending into the pits. Every head snaps upward as it circles above, its tattered wings spreading wide against the stormy sky. The Wraith, cloaked in black and crowned with malice, dismounts and glides toward Orthanc. Whispers ripple through the pits like wind through dry leaves. A ring Wraith, one mutters, his voice low with awe and fear. What's he want here? Keep your mouth shut and your hands moving, another snaps, though his own hands tremble as he sharpens a blade. The Nazgul's very presence is enough to unnerve even the strongest of us. We were bred for war, but these creatures, they are terror incarnate. Saruman himself emerges from his tower, his white robes stark against the black stone of Orthanc. With his staff in hand, he strides toward the Wraith, his expression calm, but his steps quick. The two figures meet and exchange no greetings. None are needed. Together, they turn and begin walking along the edges of the pits, their voices low and conspiratorial. The sight of them together, the White Wizard and the servant of the Dark Lord, sends a ripple of unease through the workers. This is more than a mere inspection. Whatever plans they're discussing, they involve power far beyond our comprehension. Work faster, barks an overseer, his voice cracking like a whip. Don't make the White Wizard look weak in front of his guest. I redouble my efforts, hammering at a glowing blade with all the force I can muster. Around me, my brethren do the same, the clanging of steel and the hiss of quenching metal rising to a frantic crescendo. No one dares glance at the Wraith as it passes by, its black robes trailing like tendrils of smoke. But we all feel its gaze, cold and piercing, as though it sees into the darkest corners of our minds. It speaks then, its voice a low, rasping hiss that seems to echo from another world. The forges burn bright, Saruman, but will they burn bright enough to match the eye's hunger? They will, Saruman replies, his voice steady and assured. My Uruk Hai are ready. The weapons, the armor, every piece is crafted for conquest. When the time comes, you will see. The Wraith stops, turning slightly as though observing us more closely. I feel its unseen eyes sweep across the pit, and my grip on the hammer tightens. My heart pounds, but I keep working, refusing to slow even for a moment. For what feels like an eternity, it watches. Then, without another word, it turns and continues its path alongside Saruman. Their conversation fades as they ascend toward Orthanc, leaving us to our labor. But even as the Wraith disappears from view, its presence lingers. a shadow that clings to the edges of the pit. The overseers call for another round of weapons to be brought forward. None of us complain. We work harder, faster, driven not by the lash, but by the fear of what might happen if we falter. Then they count and count. Tomorrow we march to war, but today we labor beneath the gaze of powers far greater than ourselves. The Wraith's departure doesn't ease the tension in the pits. If anything, it deepens, leaving behind a silence that feels more ominous than the screeches of its mount. We keep our heads down and work, the fires of the forges mirrored in our dark eyes. The overseers don't need to shout as much now. Fear is its own whip, driving us harder than even their most brutal threats. Night falls, though it's hard to tell in Isengard. The sky is always dark here, choked by smoke and shadow. Still, the change in shift comes, and I finally set down my hammer, my muscles screaming from the day's labor. My hands are blistered, my body coated in soot and sweat, but there's no time to rest, not with the march so close. We gather in the central pits as the captains bark instructions. The first wave of Uruk Hai will move at dawn, loaded with the finest weapons and armor we've forged. The second wave follows at midday. By nightfall, all of Isengard will be emptied, its full might rolling toward Helm's Deep to crush the armies of Rohan. The captains emphasize our purpose again and again. You are the first of your kind, bellows Wraith. Bellows before us like a wolf sizing up its pack. His voice echoes through the pits, cutting through the murmur of the restless Uruks. Stronger than men, smarter than orcs, you are Saruman's hand, and tomorrow you will crush his enemies beneath your boots. A roar rises from the crowd, and I join in, my voice blending with the guttural cries of my brothers. It's not just a show of loyalty. The roar is how we drown out fear, how we replace it with fury. Zava! As the night drags on, I find a moment of quiet near the edge of the pit. I stare at the distant glow of Orthank's Peak, where Saruman undoubtedly schemes with the eye. The thought of the great eye watching from afar sends a chill through me. Its gaze, like the Wraith's, is something we cannot escape. I glance around at my brethren. Some sharpen their blades one last time. Others sleep in uneasy fits, their hands twitching as though they dream of the battles ahead. I wonder how many of us will see another dawn after tomorrow. But such thoughts have no place here. We are not meant to ponder or question. Saruman forged us for one purpose: war. And if death comes, it will come with a blade in my hand and the blood of my enemies soaking the ground. The horns sound before the sun rises, a deep, echoing call that vibrates through the stones of Isengard. It's time. I rise, hefting my freshly forged blade, and join the mass of Uruk Hai assembling at the gates. The ground shakes beneath our feet as we march, a tide of darkness spilling from the pits to claim the world beyond. Behind us, the fires of Isengard burn on, consuming the earth and spitting forth the tools of war. Ahead lies Helm's Deep and the men of Rohan. We are Saruman's creations, and his will is ours. The fields of battle await. Thus ends a single day in Isengard, where the forges never rest, the labor never ceases, and the Uruk Hai march to fulfill the ambition of a fallen wizard. To the outside world, we are monsters, but to Saruman, we are perfection.